Next docketed item, please.
Item number 6, number 5006.
Chairman Craven, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Please state your point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I object to this bill being on the floor today. It violates your policy, of which you told me until an appropriation bill is passed in the budget, like my tax on breast pumps, it is not to be passed as a bill. This is for one procedure, abortion, not cancer. So I feel that this is a private appropriation, and I ask that you be equitable.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Representative Lima, it is not a point of order. You can make your argument when we get into the debate of the bill, but it's not a point of order. And if you'd like, I'll just rule it out of order. It's non-germane, your objection. Thank you. Please proceed, Chairman Craven.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill comes to us from Whip Kazarian. It's an act related to state affairs and government, particularly health care for children and pregnant women, called the Equity in Abortion Coverage. And what it does is, simply, the act would provide for abortion coverage in Medicaid program and in the Medicaid program and repeal the abortion coverage exclusion from state employee insurance plans. I stood on this floor in 2019. And we codified Roe versus Wade. This is the accompanying bill. We created a right that a woman had to get an abortion. It's now the law of Rhode Island. Maybe not the law of the land, but it's the law of Rhode Island. And you can't exercise a right until you can afford to pay for it. This is the affording to pay for it aspect, and it gives a woman a right to not have to worry about money in order to be able to exercise those rights. As such, it's a good bill. I move passage.
Chairman Craven moves passage. Seconded by Representative Carson, Representative Carter, Representative Spears, Chairwoman Donovan, Representative Abney, Representative Speakman, Representative Henrys, Representative Beer, Leader Blazajewski, Representative DeSimone, Representative Magor, Chairman Craven, Representative Caldwell, Representative Morales, Chairwoman McEntee, Representative Dawson, Representative Finkelman, Chairman Shanley, Representative Agello, Representative Handy, Representative Cortrivan, Representative Knight, Chairman Bennett, Floor Manager Edwards, Representative Kislak, Representative Felix, nice to have you back, Chairman McNamara, Representative Tanzi, Representative Giraldo, Representative Potter, Representative Vos, Representative Cruz, Representative Stewart, Representative Sanchez, Whip Kazarian, Representative Casimiro, Representative Bolin, Representative Messier, and Representative Alzate. On the bill, Representative Lima.
You keep calling me that, Mr. Speaker.
Old habits.
Okay, you said I can talk about it on the floor. Why I was objecting to this bill being on the floor today is because when I took the tax off the breast pump with my bill, you said your policy, and you're the Speaker of the House, so your policy is like a rule, that we do not pass any bills with appropriations until they pass in the budget. We could pass the bill after. So now we have a bill that's having appropriations that the governor put in the budget for $600,000 would be the cost. Well, we haven't passed the budget, but yet we're passing this bill here today that would have the taxpayers pay for abortions for state workers and Medicaid people. This is a specific thing because it's about abortion. It's not paying for all medical care or Medicaid people to have all their drugs and cancer treatments paid for. It's specific. Now, I tried to have 2 amendments drafted, but I was past noon, so I had to obey that rule, where I didn't get them in on time, but I'll get them in after as legislation. I still have 2 Ds left. So my first one would be to not force mandate that taxpayers who for personal reasons or religious reasons do not agree with abortion to have to pay for it. Now, I'm pro-choice. I have always been pro-choice for up to 3 months, period. The part about incest, rape, or the care of the mother, the advocates were not accurate. That's already covered in Medicaid. We all know what the truth is there. This is the taxpayers who have a fundamental belief against abortion are going to have to pay for it. Now, don't say the taxpayers aren't going to pay for it. We know they are. Unless, Mr. Speaker, you have a golden goose that lays a golden egg in your office, where's this money going to come from? And I stand here today say government should not force people to pay taxes on something they're fundamentally against. Just like I would stand here and defend a woman's right for abortion up to 3 months and the government shouldn't interfere in that. And I did. I voted to secure a woman's right to an abortion. Forcing people to pay for this? Why couldn't we have, for the people who want to pay for this, check it off in your income tax? You can donate money. Voluntary, not mandating it. Or I got a better idea. Davy Crockett spoke about this on the House floor in the 1800s. It is so easy to spend money when it's not yours, when it's taxpayer money. Well, if the 50 or something people on this floor want to pay for abortion, here's what I suggest to you. You make approximately $18,000 a year times 52, boom, you got over $900,000. If you want to do it, use your money, not the taxpayers' money. This isn't paying for health care. It's not including cancer treatments. At the time of the worst inflation, people are suffering. They can't afford food. Gas prices are high. You, Mr. Speaker, have been very hard working on getting people places to live with the housing bills. At the worst possible time, we're putting another tax on the people. And you know what? And I don't want to hear about polls and the way they ask the question, because I tell you what, put a tax on something and say to the people, you want to pay $5 more tax for gas? No, they don't. People are taxed out, they're tired, and we have to not protect a group that wants a certain issue at the expense of the rest of the Rhode Island taxpayers who do not want it. That is wrong. So I ask my colleagues, for that reason, whether you're pro-choice, pro-abortion, whatever, this is the wrong way to do it. It's not fair, it's not equitable. So I ask you to support against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Corvese, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's no surprise to anyone in this chamber that I rise in strong opposition to this bill. Termination of pregnancy in the case of rape, incest, endangerment of the physical health of the mother is a legitimate medical procedure. Termination of pregnancy as a method of after-the-fact birth control is an abomination and unconscionable in a civilized society. The bill before us does not differentiate the use of the funds. In addition, it's been very clear, made to me by my constituents in my district, they do not want their hard-earned taxpayers' dollars paying for someone else's abortion. And for those reasons, and a few others I could get into, but I'm not going to belabor the point at this time, I ask those representatives in this room who are like-minded and have similar constituencies and similar constituent concerns to vote against this bill. Now that was the sum total of my speech on the floor. However, there's a notion I feel compelled to dispel. And it's unfortunate that it was my dear friend, Chairman Craven, who mentioned the phrase, because Bobby, you know the respect I have for you. Personal, political, you know how I feel. But there's an argument that's a notion that's been more or less promoted by the proponents of the bill, let's say outside the chamber, that somehow, if a person cannot access an abortion, the right does not exist. I have a constitutional right, bear with me, this is an analogy. I have a constitutional right written into the Constitution in indelible ink, not a right placed into state statute, not a court-mediated right, not a right born of case law, but an actual constitutional right decided to put there by our founding fathers to bear arms, to possess a firearm. But if I cannot afford a firearm, I cannot possess it. That does not make the right disappear. That does not make the wording in the Constitution disappear as if it was written with disappearing ink. It does not disappear, it does not dissolve, it does not dissipate, it is not sent into an alternate universe where it has never existed. I can't possess a firearm because I can't afford it. And likewise, if a woman cannot afford an abortion, they cannot get it. They cannot access an abortion. But that does not destroy the right. That does not take the right away. And with all due respect to my colleague, who I think the world of, that is respectfully the most rakish form of sexist hyperbole. And I realized that that was promoted by the groups supporting this outside the chamber. So Bob, my apologies if I had to take issue with a small portion of your presentation, but those of you who feel, as I do, that this is wrong, that there is a differentiation where these monies should be used, and your constituency is like-minded, I would ask you to vote against this bill. Thank you for your time and your patience and your respect.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Perez, please.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I was listening to my colleagues here, and I was thinking about, I wish that I can talk the way they do it. But the English is not my first language, so I had to think twice before I say something. But in here, there's two kind of people. The one that believe the abortion is the right thing, and they are people that think the abortion is a murder. And I'm one of those that believe the abortion is a murder. And Representative Craven just said about the Bill of Rights. Maybe he forgot to mention that the Bill of Rights say religion is one of the constitutional rights that I have. So by passing a bill like this, it's against my religion because I believe the abortion is a murder. So now you're making me like an accomplice to commit murder because you're forcing me to pay for somebody else killing of the baby. Yes, there are rights about you got rape, you got incest, whatever. Yeah, I agree with that. But just forcing me to pay for somebody pleasure and then having an abortion, why you don't force that people to have surgery, not to have baby later? Then I agree with that. In the meantime, sorry, no. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Chairwoman McEntee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support for this legislation, and I'm somewhat concerned about what I'm hearing from people today. This is the final piece of the Women's Reproductive Rights Act. This is women's health care. This is not buying a firearm. This is not a pleasure item. This is health care for women. We women are under attack throughout this country for a right that we've possessed for 50 years. This has got to stop. This is women's health care. This isn't a day at the beach. This is a very serious decision made by any woman, and it can be agonizing. Let's give them the support they need through their health care insurance, through Medicare, Medicaid. We can't, this is a good bill. Please, I urge you to pass it. Let's not compare this to firearms. Let's not compare this to a right that we have that is pleasurable. This is a difficult decision. Anyway, with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm very much in support of this bill, and I urge my colleagues to vote yes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Leader Chippendale, please.
Thank you, Speaker. First, just a minor correction. This is not all about women. If you just read the bill, we've stricken the word women and we've changed it to persons. So this is clearly about persons. But the bill, obviously, it's not about abortion. We had that debate in 2019. This is simply about whether or not taxpayers fund it. We've all had communications from our constituents, as have I. And unlike 2019, there was 100% opposition. I received nothing from anyone. In fact, nothing from anyone across the state supporting it. We've seen some alleged poll figures that don't seem to add up with what we see nationally and what we know from our conversations with people. So I think there was a lot of really pressured marketing that went on this issue, into this issue. We learned in testimony that folks who were underprivileged and needed to avail themselves to this procedure, there was a group that did that. They raised the money and they ensured that these people they were concerned about were able to get what they wanted. And that's appropriate for them. If they can live with that, that's up to them. But it shouldn't be up to all of us who don't support it. It shouldn't be up to us to address someone else's personal irresponsibility. It's not fair to the people of the state who pay taxes. We've already heard, and it's despite the advocates, it is clear that the federal government permits Medicaid to cover this. So this alleged inequity for people who are poor just simply is not what we're talking about here. If there are horrible issues, and they are horrible when you're talking about rape or incest, or if the mom's life is in danger, those are horrible. But the government, the federal government, already protects those. That's not what this is about. This is elective. It's elective, which Medicaid doesn't support all other, or many other elective, or any other elective procedures. This is new territory. We're inventing new land here, and we're really going outside of where we really ought to do it. It is not appropriate. It is not an appropriate use of taxpayer funds. And we should not be doing this now. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Leader. Representative Agello, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. I rise in strong support of this legislation, and on a couple of angles. First of all, regarding the taxpayer funding, Medicaid funding, and state employee health insurance coverage for abortion. I'm old enough to remember when there were many people in Rhode Island and across the country who were offended that their tax money was going to support the war in Vietnam. And I had friends growing up who were Christian Scientists, religious Christian Scientists. They did not believe in medical care. My friend Midge prayed when she was sick. She didn't go to the doctor. I remember the first time I went to see her when she was sick, I was astonished that her mother wasn't calling the doctor. Her mother had to pay income tax, property tax, had to pay income tax towards health care for others. There are, I'm sure, still Christian Scientists who don't approve of medical care. They're paying for all sorts of medical care that they wouldn't have themselves. They have no choice. They're paying for it in their Social Security, towards their eligibility for Medicare, and they're paying for it in their taxes towards Medicaid coverage. So this idea of taxpayers being able to decide, I don't want to pay for it, it doesn't work. And I think I've given you 2 examples there. Now I'd like to go back for a moment to 2019 and remind you all that when Chairwoman Williams introduced 5125 in 2019, that legislation included exactly the coverage that we're voting on today. I want to thank her for doing that then, and I want to thank Leader Blazejewski, Chairwoman Alzate, former Representative Barrows, and Chairman Shanley for co-sponsoring that legislation. She started this ball rolling, and then later, Liana Kassar took up the wand or whatever, and now Representative Kazarian. I urge you all to pass this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Morgan, please.
Thank you, Speaker. There's so much talk about abortion, and there's one word that's almost never mentioned, and that's contraceptives. Contraceptives is health care. Abortion is not. I'm old enough to remember when I was growing up that couples didn't have many choices. They have dozens of choices now. Contraceptives are not just daily pills. They can last 3 years, 5 years. I was in the doctor's office the other day. There is a contraceptive that lasts for 10 years. And it's cost effective. And it is health care. I bet everybody in this room has heard the word contraceptives. Why do we think that the poor shouldn't be allowed to get contraceptives? Why do we think that they shouldn't be made available to them and that they're not responsible enough to use them? They are. Let's make sure that they're available, because I'm sure that our constituents would not have any problem at all paying for contraceptives. That's when a woman really is in control, when a couple is in control. They lose control when they have a pregnancy that they don't plan for. There is a cost, not only a financial cost to the state, there is a psychological and emotional cost to the couple that must terminate their child. And there is a moral cost to our society. Why don't we work on making sure that contraceptives are easily available and free if they have to be, but not abortions. It's not health care, and it is not birth control. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Brien, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House. Mr. Speaker, I rise in opposition of this legislation today, and I want to start by saying there's something that I believe that's important for all individuals, and that's truth in advertising. And why do I say that? Because when you're selling something, you should be truthful about what it is that you're selling. And you should be honest about what it is that you want people to support or buy. The campaign, particularly what
my friend Representative Corvese referred to as the groups outside of this room engaged in my opinion, at best was obfuscation, and at worst was manipulation. I'm going to give you an example. I've got here something from the Woman Project, and the Woman Project said, myth. The Equality in Abortion Coverage Act is trying to push for taxpayer-funded abortions. The EACA simply gets rid of the policies that deny health benefits for abortion in these public insurance programs, referring to Medicaid and the state employee programs. Well, it's a myth that we're trying to create taxpayer-funded abortions. Well, that's not a myth, because here's the Rhode Island Medicaid expenditure report, dated May 6, 2021. And it says right here, Medicaid programs are funded by the state and federal dollars. In fiscal year 19, Rhode Island paid approximately $1 billion, or 40% of expenditures, with state dollars. State dollars just aren't generated out of the blue, out of the ether. They're tax dollars. Your taxes are going for this. Saying it's a myth is a lie. Be honest. The state spent $213 million in expenditures on health benefits for state employees. That $213 million that it spent is tax dollars, state revenue. The governor's budget, right here, abortion coverage. The fiscal year 2024 budget includes $6 million from general revenues in the Executive Office of Health and Human Services, that being the Medicaid portion, and $29,500 in the Department of Administration to account for state employees. Tax dollars spent for abortions. So it's not a myth. Be honest. That's the first point. Then we move on to the poll. The poll, which is so off-cited in this room and beyond, outside of this room. And in my opinion, the poll is a puddled mess, which intentionally misled the respondents. And what was the question? What's the 70% positive rate that was asked of the people who took that poll? September 4th, 22, Kathy Gregg article from the Pro-Joe. The question: Rhode Island state legislators are considering the Equality in Abortion Act, Coverage Act, or the EACA, which will provide coverage for abortion in the state's Medicaid program and will remove bans on abortion coverage for state employees. Do you support or oppose this legislation? That's a very rosy, vanilla statement. Someone who's not that plugged in gets this call, hears that question and says, yeah, I mean, there shouldn't be any bans, right? Sure. Move on. 70%. Woonsocket's a unique place. I know many of you probably already think that. Woonsocket's a unique place. We have 2 talk radio stations in Woonsocket. I happen to host a radio show on one of them, an hour-long show. And I asked this poll question, because this is truth in advertising. The poll question was, do you support your tax dollars being used to pay for other people's abortions? Because that's an honest question.
1 minute, please.
16-2 in the negative. 16-2. So I've got an idea. Let's recommit the bill. Let's all chip in $1,000 and we'll have a poll. The poll will be diverse. Diversity is the order of the day, correct? Well, this poll had an 81% response rate by Caucasians. So what about you people, you reps with minority, majority districts, Latino districts, African American districts? Don't you think that they should be included in a poll? Don't you think they should be asked? This is not a partisan issue. Some are all for, some are against. That's fine. Like my dad said, that's why they make chocolate, that's why they make vanilla. Some of you will think this is a party issue and a responsibility to vote for this. It's not. Search your heart and your mind and your conscience and your soul. Ask the question again. Should we be paying with taxpayer dollars to fund a...
Time, please. Thank you. Chairwoman Serpa, please.
Thank you, Speaker.
I wrote in today, determined that I was not going to speak. This is a torturous subject for me, personally and professionally. And I think I want to base my vote, not how I feel, but what I know. And I'm going to tell you what I know. I spent 28 years in public education, 4 of those years as a classroom teacher, the other 24 as a guidance counselor. I'm aware of a girl as young as sixth grade who became pregnant, and we called them junior highs in those days. Girls at the junior high and the high school were frequently becoming pregnant. And frequently, unfortunately, I was the first to know. And it was never my job to persuade or dissuade one way or the other. My job was clearly to make sure that they involved their parents in whatever decision they made. Once in a while, because they were afraid, can you be with me? My mother's going to kill me. My father's going to throw me out. Will you be there when I tell them? So sometimes they came to school and we told the parents together. Sometimes I went to the home after dinner and we told the parents together. Many of those girls had their babies. Many of those girls had abortions. Some of those girls were low income. Some were moderate income. Some were pretty wealthy. What I know is not one of them ever came to me and said, Mrs. Serper, I have to have this baby because I can't get an abortion. That's what I know. Girls who wanted the abortion and their families got the abortion. When I retired from public education, I worked at a local university part-time for 10 years with college-age girls who became pregnant. Many of them had abortions. I don't remember any single one of them ever saying, oh, I gotta have this baby, I can't have an abortion. So, unless I'm really missing something, I'm just not understanding this lack of access to abortion. I'm really not understanding. And I think Lita Chippendale said it so well. And Dr. Corvese, you said the same thing on page 3, this any termination of pregnancy. That's really troublesome to me. Rapes, I get it. Delivering multiply handicapped babies, I guess I get it. But I know what I know. And I know no one has ever said, I can't have an abortion. I know state workers who have had an abortion. Family members have had abortions. Not a one has ever said to me, I have no access to abortion. On my father's soul, not one time in my life have I heard that. So that's my story. I'm going to sit here and listen to the rest of you, and thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Representative Cardillo, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition of having taxpayers' money used for Medicaid abortions and having taxpayer-funded insurance plans for state employees include abortion coverage. The religious beliefs of pro-life taxpayers on abortion must be given the same consideration that we give to the legislation preventing government from interfering in a woman's right to have an abortion. If we pass legislation codifying Roe v. Wade to protect those who support pro-choice, then we must also be against legislation forcing pro-life advocates to pay for Medicaid abortions. We should instead find funding from other ways to have medication abortion coverage to be paid for instead of paid for by the taxpayers. So, Mr. Speaker and members of the House, I ask you to vote no on this legislation and vote to help the taxpayers of your district. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Alzate, please.
Thank you, Speaker. I stand in strong support of this legislation. I was a proud sponsor of our 2019 RPA that passed the House. When there's a lot of talk about abortion, being raped, and why that's okay, and taxpayer-funded abortion and things like that. The one thing that we are missing is that this is health care. This is care that a person who chooses not to bear a child has the option of doing. This is if a person has an atomic pregnancy and could die because they don't have access to an abortion. This is health care. What we are not talking about is why this is important. It's equity. People in my community, I grew up with tons of girls who had to have children because they could not afford an abortion. I have people in my community who have to choose between paying rent or taking care of another child. I have people in my community who are constantly talking about how terrible their health care is. This is about health care. This is about women's health care. If you want to talk about women's reproductive right because of what the procedure is, that's fine. But this is about women's health care. Women are constantly under attack every single day, and not only for abortions, because our health care system does not take care of women. And it gets worse when we're talking about women of color and when we talk about our trans community. This is not only about abortion, this is about equity. This is about making sure that a person who is choosing not to bear a child, that is their business, and they're doing it for themselves because that is what's good for them and their family. This is not necessarily only about taxpayer-funded things. Taxpayers pay a lot of things, and a lot of things that they might not know, and if they knew about it, they probably wouldn't like it either. But this is about equity, about making sure that if a person is on Medicaid, is able to make the best decision for their family. Medicaid is also taking care of them if they choose to bear a child. They're going a lot more money, I'm sure of it. And then what do? We don't even take care of that kid when it comes out. This is about equity and making sure that women or people who identify as women are choosing what is the best thing for them and their families. And also allowing our Black and Latino community to make a decision for themselves. These decisions have usually always been made for them. They can't afford it. They don't have good jobs. They can't afford rent. They can't afford food. They can't afford a $600 abortion. That is a lot of money for a family who is barely making it. This is about equity. This is about letting a person choose what is right for them. This has nothing to do with any of us. This is about allowing a woman or a person who identifies as a woman, if this is not good for their family, who are we to tell them what to do with it? This isn't about, can you imagine being raped, being violated, and then having to do another thing that maybe they never wanted to do? Abortions are not only for people who get raped. Abortions are for everybody who chooses to get one. And we need to make sure that this is accessible to them. I am happy to house and even pay for an abortion for a person in a state that they are no longer able to access this. They are more than welcome to stay at my house. I will bathe them, I would feed them, I will clothe them, and I will pay for it. Because that is their choice, and they're making the best decision for their family. And it's health care. It's making sure that they're taking care of their bodies the way that they want it.
1 minute, please.
I stand in strong support. I hope that you will all stand with me by voting this bill in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Chairman Azanaro, please.
Thank you, Speaker. I wasn't really going to get up, but I felt I had to. And I'll be brief, because I think everybody in this room knows that abortions are covered by Medicaid if a doctor prescribes it because of the mother's health, or it could be for rape and incest. Using abortion for birth control is wrong, and that's what's going on here. It's not about health care, it's about killing a baby. I ask everyone here to look in their conscience and think about what they're doing here and vote this bill down. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Quattrochi, please.
Thank you, Speaker. In keeping with my radical nature, I'm going to make some highly radical and controversial statements. You all ready? I support, uphold, and defend the Constitution of Rhode Island. Article 6, Section 1 says that this Constitution shall be the supreme law of the state, and any law inconsistent therewith shall be void. I don't know if any of the legal minds in here could twist that up into knots. I'm not sure. Article 1, Section 2, it says that at the bottom of the section, it says that nothing in this section shall be construed to grant or secure any right relating to abortion or the funding thereof. At the top of it, it says in big bold letters that no right to abortion should be granted. I don't know how we even got past that point, but we did. If I could, Mr. Speaker, a question to the chairman.
The chairman, or actually the sponsor will yield. Sponsor will yield.
Actually, the chairman's a lawyer, so I'd rather ask the lawyer.
The sponsor is actually studying to become a lawyer.
Oh,
He'll
great.
take your question.
Oh,
Thank
perfect.
you.
Excellent, excellent. Excellent. So, actually, when I was in finance previously, I've heard versions of this bill come before us, and I always ask the same questions of those who are, advocates of this. And the question, I'm going to ask you the same question. How does forcing of taxpayers to pay for abortions, how does it mesh in any possible way with what I read from our state's constitution? How does it mesh in any possible way? And also, if I could, and why are we not required to follow our constitutional protocols for a constitutional amendment process to eliminate this wording in our Constitution that's so very plain and simple, even though I'm not a lawyer and I can't understand English?
Representative, I'll answer your question.
Please do.
This is a very simple bill, and it does a very simple thing. This bill will ensure that all women, no matter what health insurance plan they're on, would receive abortion coverage. This bill is about trusting women. This bill is about allowing women to make those medical decisions with their doctors privately. It's about ensuring that women don't have to make medical decisions based on what their coverage allows. This is not about redebating the question of choice. This chamber already did that in 2019. This is about equity. This is about coverage. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, thank you. It really didn't. This is the same legalese dance that went around and round in Finance Committee, and no one actually had an answer to it, the constitutional question. Mr. Speaker, I feel that to vote either way on this is a violation of my oath of office. And I believe that I would like out of an abundance of caution, I would like a recusal form.
No problem. We'll send one up. Please fill it out. I'll be glad to execute.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative. Representative Diaz, please. Chairwoman Diaz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the House. I was not planning to make any statement, but I feel that I had to make some comments and some statement that was shared in this House. But before I do that, I'd like to say that during my 18 years here, I learned how to respect all my colleagues' opinions. I learned a lot, I processed a lot, and through those years, sometimes I changed my position to take decisions here. But it's something I always keep in mind, the reason and why I came here and I became a state representative. And the main reason is the district that I'm representing. They brought me here 9 times, and I appreciate that. And every single of those times, I had to keep it in mind that I have 2 or 3 churches in my district. I have very conservative people who believe in life. And at the personal experience, I have 5 children and 7 grandkids. So I believe that and it was in the past, if I was pregnant, I had to deliver my baby. And that was a great experience. And I also know that it's not the same experience for other women, and I also respect that. I'm not here to judge anyone, as I mentioned before. I'm here to representing 14,000 plus individuals who live in District 11. And they are a very diverse community, a lot of Latinos. In fact, I had 13 different languages in my district. 13, you heard that, Representative. And I also have a lot of African American came from Nigeria, Liberia, amazing people who working every single day. They take very concerned decisions in everything they do in life. I don't judge them. I don't judge the member here for whatever decision, whatever reason you take. But my personal one is to know that there in District 11 is Latinos who believe in choice, and Latinos who believe in life. And because the pro-life individuals are bigger than pro-choice, my only decision is go in that direction, to represent those who bring me here every 2 years. And I will continue to be here, thanks to them. Many of the questions when I door knocking is, do you vote for this and that? And I had to carry my sheet that show how I vote to prove then my position and get the vote. That is my personal experience again. And it's something I do to get reelected. Again, I respect everybody's opinion. I'm pleased and happy to be here. But not all Latinos are pro-choice. Not all African Americans are pro-life. Not all Latinos are pro-choice. I want to have that clear, because as the state is very diverse, we have very diverse decisions and choices. And last but not least, I believe Medicare covers what is by the statutes of the federal law. And I believe in that opportunity. But my question is, if somebody can answer, if I don't have a Medicaid or private insurance, what happened to my choice? What happened to my decision to have access to abortion? So I posed that question because that part has really confused me. It's only for Medicare paid by the taxpayers on the state of Rhode Island. So
One
again,
minute, please. One
I
minute.
respect everybody's opinion, but I follow what District 11 residents asked me to do. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Representative Tansey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of this bill. I have to say that when I was elected and got insurance, health insurance from through my work here, it never dawned on me to think about whether or not my coverage, my health insurance covered abortion. I was just glad to have health care. And good health care at that. I think most people who are employed by the state, if you would ask them 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they had no idea that their coverage did not cover abortion. In fact, most people don't even think of it, I'm guessing, right? Even me, who, is a feminist, want to protect access to all forms of women's health care. We don't plan for unplanned pregnancies. It's just that simple. I also want to give a little biology quick exam here. Women spend 4 decades ovulating. That's about 5 days of every month where they're possible to get pregnant. 12 months in a year. Over 40 years, that's 2,400 points in time where a woman has to be concerned about that, right? Now, if you want to have one child, you take that down to 2,399 times that you don't have to worry about it. If you want to have 2 children, you bring that down to 2,498 times that you don't have to worry about getting pregnant. I think you guys can follow the math here and say that even for one of the best goalies in hockey, that's a lot of work, protecting that goal. Another quick biology lesson, right? You think, oh, we've got tons of contraception, we've got all of these wonderful, wonderful things. Well, some people really aren't good with hormones. Some people really, it impacts them in ways that perhaps men aren't aware of. People can become depressed. People can become suicidal when they have hormones in their body for those 40 years. Some people can't use contraceptives the way that many others can. And you have to take the pill the same time every day. Isn't that a fun fact, right? Because the efficacy of it diminishes if you miss it by an hour one day, right? So then you've got to go back to worrying again. I don't think it's as simple as many people here are operating under that assumption. I have one last thing I want to share. I was a patient escort at an abortion clinic for 6 years. I heard a lot of stories. I didn't ask for them. People felt obligated to tell me why they were there that day. There are people on the other side of the fence screaming at them, yelling at them, calling them the most horrendous things you could ever imagine. And they would tell me why they were there, that they had 3 kids at home. The husband lost his job. They can't possibly pay or have another child. I can share my own experience. I have 1 child at home who I love and adore. I had such a horrible pregnancy. I was in a recliner, to be quite honest with you, for 7.5 of those months. I couldn't drive.
1 minute, please.
I couldn't eat. I couldn't watch TV. I couldn't read a book. I literally sat in the dark in a recliner with the heat cranked up to 90 for 7.5 months. Now, how am I gonna plan for another child if I can't take care of myself? If I have a 2-year-old running around, I can't have another child. That was a decision I made. And yet I'm still expected to play goalie for another 20 years. So I just want to bring it down to a different level for people. Maybe they can understand. And I hope that you can see it a little bit differently now and support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Lima, please, for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I'm sitting here listening to debate, and I can't believe I heard at least 3 elected officials say, this is women's health care. Yet at the same time, they take the word woman out of the bill, and they replace it with the word person. I am so offended by that. Do men get pregnant? It should be woman. We women have fought so hard and so long for our rights and to be recognized, from suffrage to equal pay. And here we are saying this is for women's health care, which it's not for women and it's not for health care because we're taking women out, which leads me to believe this is just political. That was my second amendment I tried to put in, was to put the word woman back in it. Where are the women who are not offended by this? I don't get it. Somebody just came over and asked me, what about the people that have the baby and how much it's going to cost the government to raise that baby? Let me tell you something. You cannot adopt a baby in Rhode Island. Babies are not available. Her former rep that was on this floor wanted to adopt a baby. She had to go to Russia and adopt that baby. I'm not saying, I'm pro-choice. I voted for Representative Alzati's bill. I'm not saying people should not have access to an abortion. What I'm saying is the taxpayers who have a fundamental objection to this should not be forced to pay for it. I have respect and compassion for those who cannot afford an abortion, but we must not let that compassion lead to do an injustice to the rest of the Rhode Island taxpayers. And that is exactly what this legislation is doing. This is not in the budget because I think there was concern about having 2/3 of the votes. I consider it a private action because it's specifically about abortion. It's not about health care for cancer and other things people suffer from. So that's why this bill, against the Speaker's policy, is on this floor today. Political, to get it passed. I hear many of you with great arguments getting up on this floor saying why we should not pass this bill today. I think Representative Breen made an excellent point on the polls. Now, let's give it this scenario. We have a part-time state worker making $200,000, $3,000 bonuses, has a state car, and the single mother who's at the grocery store the other day who couldn't afford her groceries. She was putting things back. What about her? Well, guess what? Now she has another bill on her hands. Now she's going to have her taxpayer money going to pay for the abortion of a state worker who's making $200,000. How do you not feel for that single mother who's making minimum wage, who's pro-life,
1 minute.
telling her, I don't care what your religion is. I don't care what your fundamental beliefs is. The government in Rhode Island says you must pay for the abortion of somebody who's making $200,000. I'm hearing fear and equity on this floor. Where is the fear and equity? When you look at those people who are struggling with inflation roaring right now, and you're going to take money out of the taxpayer's pocket while they're hurting. This is wrong. Please, find another way to do it. I ask you not to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. For the Representative Perez, please, for the second time.
Speaker, I remember in 2016, just before I get in for the first time here, my wife was having a miscarriage. People talking here about healthcare. I don't remember after all the bad stuff that we went through with the miscarriage. I don't remember that I ever get a bill for the hospital. They make me believe in here that, oh, your women don't gonna be covered if you having an abortion. There are many people here that don't gonna dare to vote against that bill, just because they're afraid. But let me tell you something. At the same time that I got elected for the first time, I came the first day here very naive, thinking that, oh, I'm going to represent my people, I'm going to vote the right way. I voted no for something in that day schedule. 5 minutes later, I got called to the Speaker office. Ramon, you want to be part of the leadership? Or you want to be one that next year you're going to have an opponent? You say, hey, why you say that? You voting no for what I'm putting in the floor. I'm not saying that was you, Speaker. Was the previous speaker that happened to me. But since that, I learned this. In here, it's the same rule, the same law. You don't dare to do anything about what the speaker put in the floor. But enough is enough, you know. You had your limit. I was told at the same time, okay, we're going to make a deal. Only something they go against your really belief, I'm going to allow you to vote no. After that, if anything, you have to vote yes because I put it in the floor. But I have a question now, Speaker. If you are so sure that that's the right way or the right thing to do, why you don't put it for a referendum? That way the people of the state vote and decide, and not just a bunch of people that we know they're going to vote yes in here no matter what. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Chairwoman Serpa for the second time, please.
Thank you, Speaker. I'll be brief, and honestly, I'm asking a question because I really want to know the answer. So with your permission, could I ask either the chairman or Whip Kazarian a question? Because I really want to know the answer.
Chairwoman, address me, please. Answer the question. I'll defer it to whoever will answer it.
So my question is, Speaker, admittedly, I've been out of the loop of being around high school students and college students for a few years. So if something has changed, I've heard a number of people speak to the lack of access to abortion. So I genuinely want to know, do any of the members or the whip or the chairman, did they hear people in judiciary come forward and say, I couldn't get an abortion, I had to have the baby? And I'm not trying to be fresh, I genuinely want to know that. Thank you, Speaker.
Sir, Whip Kazarian, the sponsor, will answer the question.
Chairwoman, I'm happy to answer your question, and it's a very legitimate one. I know you're not trying to be difficult. Unfortunately, yes. We did have a lot of women come forward and testify and talk about the trouble that they dealt with when they did need to get an abortion, having to secure funds, how humbling it was, how they felt like they lost their dignity, having to go around to family members and beg for money to cover their abortion, how they had to choose between rent that month or begging their family members and friends to help them pay for an abortion. So we did hear those stories. They were really difficult, and that's what this bill would address, the way it's written. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Cardillo, please, for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll make it real quick. I have a question, please.
Please proceed.
The question I have, which Representative Lima brought up, is in this bill, it mentions, it's crossed out women and it says persons. Could you tell me why that was done, please?
I will defer to the sponsor. She'll answer the question.
Women are people.
Yes, but
also, this is...
not just women could get pregnant.
Women are people. I don't know.
Excuse me. Listen.
Sorry.
We'll maintain decorum, please, in the House.
This bill was also drafted to match the law that was passed in 2019, the way that was written. So in that law, it was struck out. It was written as person. This bill is just to match that statute.
Okay, no, I was just concerned on that, because I don't know if any men getting pregnant and having a baby for abortion.
Like I said, it's to match the current statute. Women are people. I hope that answers it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more lights. Before I go to a vote, I'd like to call on Leader Blazajewski, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For this vote, I have a proxy vote in favor of Representative Kathleen Fogarty in favor, and I'd like it to be reflected on the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Clerk, please unlock the machine. All those in the affirmative, please vote green. Any in the negative, please vote red. All members, please vote. Clerk, please lock the machine. There are 49 votes in the affirmative, 24 in the negative. The act prevails.